Hello, welcome everyone. I think we're live now. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to give a few more minutes for everyone else to join in. And before we start, I would like to encourage everyone to say hi in the chat and write where they're listening from. We like to make sure that we're not just speaking to ourselves. And for those new to our webinars, I want to also quickly introduce the format. So today we will be talking about the Truvera MCP server. Mike is going to show the demo and explain why it is very cool and why you should use it as well. Then I have some questions that I have prepared and I want to ask Mike. And of course, at the end, we will have a Q&A. Please don't wait till the end to send in your questions, so just pop them in the chat whenever you have one, and our colleague Francisco, who is running the show from the background, will note them down and will answer as many as we can at the end. So so why are we doing this webinar at all? Maybe the better question actually is why did we decide to build an MCP server? So over the past year, we've all been watching AI agents move from like an interesting experiment that everyone is playing around with to something that teams are actually trying to deploy. And one of the questions that keep coming up is, how do you give an agent the ability to prove something or to verify something about itself or the person that they're acting on behalf of? And like we see this as an identity problem. And it's one that the existing tools weren't really built to solve, as it's all very new technology. Like we're still kind of, as an industry, trying to figure it all out, right? So us as identity experts, we think that we have a better solution to the ones that are already existing now. And as part of that solution, we've built the MCP server. So MCP, or Model Context Protocol, for those maybe if there's not very technical people around here, is a standard way for AI agents to connect to external tools and services. It's an open standard defined by Anthropic. And you can think of it like a universal adapter that lets an agent reach out and do something in the real world, and in our case, issue or store a credential, verify a proof request, or manage a decentralized identifier. And all through predefined tools and resources that LLMs are really good at utilizing. So just to be clear, we did not build this to make it easier for humans to use the Truvera API via the chat interface, which is a very popular use case for the MCP servers. And I actually had a lot of fun playing with that myself, but that was not the point. What we're building towards here is identity infrastructure that agents themselves can use in workflows that come from a human delegated authority. And today's demo is a practical step in that direction. So without babbling on for too long, I'm really glad to have Mike Parkhill here to show you exactly how this works. So Mike is our head of engineering here at Doc Labs and the person who built this. So now, Mike, I'll give the mic over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Agne. Let me just share my screen. I've got some things to show. All right, so yeah, as Agne introduced, we are here to talk about the MCP server that we've built. We are building, what we're talking about today is a stepping stone. This isn't our final MCP solution. This is sort of on the path. We'll have hopefully more of these webinars over the next few months, sort of showing you as we go what we're building and how we're getting there. And I know Agne just said that we weren't building this to show how you can use it in a chat. I'm actually going to demo using it in a chat just because that's sort of where we're at right now, but it's certainly not the long-term goal. Long-term goal is agent-to-agent communication, that kind of thing. So just to get started, let me get my focus on the right spot. So I won't go through this slide because Agne sort of already covered it fairly briefly for us, but yeah, Model Context Protocol is really just giving extra functionality to the agent, the LLM, that it wouldn't have natively. I actually like to think of it, it's not a perfect example, but it's sort of like browser extensions where you get extra functionality that the browser doesn't have natively, that kind of thing. It's sort of a way I like to think about it. And so what are we building? So right now, today I'm going to talk to you about our issuer and verifier MCP server, but we're actually building two. So this issuer and verifier one is just wrapping our existing Truvera REST APIs, which are already out there in use in production, and just making it easier to access from an agent or an LLM. In the future, we're working on adding a wallet functionality to it. So that is where the agent would be able to store credentials or respond to a verification request with a proper credential presentation. That's not ready yet today. That's sort of what we're working on next. So we won't show you that, but I just want to let you know that is where we're going. Because again, when you get to the agent has to be able to issue credentials, verify credentials, and store and present credentials. So there's multiple pieces that it's going to need to do. Like I said, we're trying to build this sort of in front of you guys so you can see where we're going, what we're working on. But today we'll focus on the top line there, which is the issuance and verification with the MCP server. All right, so without further ado, let's get into a little demo of what we have. All right, so here I've got now on the screen on the left is my Claude AI. So this is just Claude Desktop, which any of you can download. And I configured it to talk to my MCP server, which is running locally. On the right is our web wallet app. So if you go to our GitHub repo, you can find in our wallet SDK repo this web example, and it's just running cloud storage for verifiable credentials and DIDs. And I actually have two in here. I've got one for an employee environment, one for an agent environment, and I'll use both of these as we go through the demo. So as you can see, I've got no credentials in here. So let's walk through actually issuing a credential. So the first thing when you're issuing a credential is you need to generate an issuer profile. So the first thing I'll do is just to show you what tools we have. I'll tell it to show the Truvera, if I can type properly, MCP tools, and I still got it wrong. Here we go. And so this is going to show you what tools we've exposed so far in this MCP server, which was a lot faster when I was doing this earlier today.
It has performance anxiety.
Yeah, it must.
Knowing it's on the webinar.
Yeah, so as you can see, it's showing all the different tools that are in here, different profiles, DIDs, credentials. So these are all the things you can do. Some things are more limited than others. You can get schema and list schemas. We don't have functionality for creating schemas, although we could add that in the future. But we do have the ability to create a proof template or get one, that kind of thing. So these are all the various pieces of functionality we've exposed from our REST API. Again, it's not the complete set. For a couple of reasons. Some of it is some things we don't think people or an agent would need to access to it. Some of it is it's a little more power than maybe you want to give just to an agent, that kind of thing. So there's a few different reasons for it. And some is just a little more complicated. So those are the tools we're going to do. So let's start off with seeing what issuer profiles we have. So again, I'm just going to reach out to the REST API, pull down the list. And I've turned on permissions, so it just automatically does things. So I didn't want to be answering yes, allow every 2 seconds. But obviously you can control through your settings whether or not it automatically does things. All right, so let's bring them all up. All right, so we've got that first one there. Let's just try and use that one. Don't need to create one, but we can also create a new one if we wanted to, but we'll just use one that already exists. So let's now go create an agent or create a credential. So I'm thinking of giving this employee wallet a proof of employment credentials. This is a very common human-based use case. It's not obviously an agent one, but it's a human-based one. But just sort of give you an idea of how it would work, how this flow goes. And so we'll go through that. We'll do an OpenID for VC issuance flow. So first, let's show the proof of employment schema just to get an idea of what data it's looking for. So again, it's going to reach out to the REST API, pull down the schema, and it should show us the details of the required fields and the optional fields and that kind of thing. And again, Claude's running slower today than it was earlier. All right, so as you can see, there's a number of different fields for an employee credential. Nothing earth-shattering here, I don't think. First name, last name, job title, that kind of thing. All the things you'd expect. Expiration, that kind of stuff's in here. So now let me just copy in the prompt to make sure I get it right this time, instead of trying to type it myself. So again, we're going to get it to issue a credential offer. So this is not actually issuing a credential. It's saying when the holder is ready to accept a credential, they will use this offer to import the credential and accept the credential. So big block of text. This is just me getting the agents to do what I want consistently. But it's just saying using the MCP server, creating an open ID for VC issuer and a credential offer for a proof of employment schema, and letting it randomly generate employee details like names and things to save me some typing. So in the background, this is a two-step piece. So the one is you create an open ID issuer, which is now just done, and then you create an offer from it. And with this offer that I'm working with right now, it could create multiple offers from the same issuer, but you can also do one-time use as one of the settings on it. So anyway, so it's created an offer for Priya to working in cloud infrastructure lead. So let's import that into our wallet. So again, this is just a fairly basic example of a wallet. It could also be a mobile, and when we get to the agent MCP server, it will be an agent as well. So this is going to again reach out to the REST API, gets the details, assigns it to Priya into this DID you see up here, and now this is bound to Priya. This is her proof of employment. So that is very quickly and very basically the issuance flow for a credential. Once Priya has that in her wallet, she's going to want to use it. Her employer is going to want to use it. So maybe she comes back into the building or goes to a new building if it's a large organization, and she'll be asked to prove who she is. So we can do that too with the MCP server. So now, actually I've got this prompt I think too. When we'll use what's called a proof template. So again, a proof template is in our system. It's a way of defining a consistent prompt for someone to prove who they are or provide the data you're asking for or you're looking for. So in this case, it's going to ask for things like give us their name, make sure the credential is valid, hasn't been revoked, that kind of thing as we go in. So again, once you have a template, you can then create an individual request from that template. So we're creating an individual proof request from our existing proof template. So again, I'm asking you to do a couple steps here. The first one is it's going to find the templates that we have defined in the system. It's finding the most commonly used one, the constraints that are on it, and that's how generating a request from it. So it's given us this URL, which I can copy. Again, this could be exposed as a QR code to a mobile, or it could be sent some other way to an agent or something like that to respond to. And then in your wallet, you verify the credential. So this is going to prompt me to sort of choose a credential. If I had more than one, I'd be able to sort of sort through them and choose whichever one is the right one. We just have one here, so it's easy. We can pull it up. And so this is going to respond back to the Truvera backend. It doesn't respond directly to the LLM. So this is going to be a multi-step thing. But it's now responded. It's been sent successfully. It's been accepted. In order for Claude to know that's happened, we need to prompt it. So now I'm going to get it to check the results of that. So it's going to reach out to the REST API and pull in the information. So now it's going back to the API and saying, okay, did you get a result for this proof request? You did, great, it's passed. And what's the information that was shared with you? And here's all the information again from Priya's credential. Obviously in the real world, you wouldn't go from the same agent who issued it to verify. There'd be two different actors, but for simplicity of the demo, I'm doing it in the same space. And you can just see all the information. Again, this is using standard W3C credentials, JSON-LD format. We can support other formats like SD-JOTs, that kind of thing. Selective disclosure would be available as well, so not all the information would need to be shared in every situation. But again, for simplicity, I've just gone for the basic standard sort of functionality in the credentials just to give you an idea of how that all works. And that's basically what I wanted to show you around sort of what we're building, what's there as far as issuance and verification goes. I could go generate a new proof template. I could generate a new issuer profile. There's all that functionality that I showed you in those other tools we could get into, but I didn't think that was as useful or as interesting, but feel free to play with those when you get a chance to later on. But yeah, that's the basic flows of this one. So the next area I wanted to get into, so we've covered sort of that, was to get into where we're going next. So as I mentioned, we're looking at a wallet MCP server, which will do credential storage and credential presentation. So all that functionality you just saw in that web example wallet, putting that into an MCP server to allow for agents to very quickly store a credential. They can expose their own DID, generate a presentation based on a proof request, that kind of thing, because we view where everything's going with Agentic will be that agents will need to be able to say who they are and what they can do. And to do that, they're going to need a wallet, and they're also going to need the ability to issue credentials sometimes, verify credentials sometimes. So it's sort of be the amalgamation of the two pieces of MCP server. And to do all that, there's a few agentic protocols that we are also looking at supporting and building towards. One of them is the agent-to-agent protocol, or A2A, which, if you don't know what that is, this is another community standard, open source standard that is out there defining how an agent identifies itself to other agents, so it can be discoverable and how they can communicate and collaborate with each other. Where we are kind of thinking it goes with our technologies is that part of the agent card, which is what in A2A you expose, would be probably the agent's DID. And then once you have the DID, you can start communicating using protocols like DIDComm, which is another open source standard for identity communication, which is encrypted and all that, and just gives a clear channel between the agents to communicate directly. So all these things I've been cutting and pasting, you would just send those as DIDComm messages between the agents using that. So we don't have that quite ready yet, but that's sort of where we're going. And the next one that I do want to show you a little bit about is the Agentic Payment Protocol, which, again, open standard. This one was defined primarily by Google with input from a lot of other players. It's starting to get some adoption. And what it's trying to solve is when you're out there on ChatGPT or Claude or any of the LLMs that are out there, we're seeing it all the time. I know I'm doing it when I'm buying things, is going and doing your research using an LLM. So you're, go find me the cheapest price on this pair of shoes, or I was just looking at some bathroom updates, so go find me information on shower faucets, that kind of thing, and then find me some pricing on them, which is great for research, great for getting some ideas of what to look for and what's important. But the next step after that is saying, hey, great, go buy me that one. That one you just told me is great, go buy it. Sounds awesome. If I can just get a computer to go, or a bot to go do that thing for me, I'd love it. The problem is, how do we trust it? So I might tell ChatGPT or Claude to say, yeah, go buy me that shower faucet kit. But then Claude has to prove, or the agent has to prove to whoever the seller is or whoever the payment platform is, that I actually did give that permission to do that and what constraints I provided for it. So which store did I want you to buy it from? How much money did I want you to spend? Those sorts of things need to be provable so that everyone in the system can trust that this is a legitimate operation, that a human being really did request it, and that it's being done within the constraints that I set. So that's where AP2 comes in. It defines a number of agreed upon mandates, which are verifiable credentials with particular schemas that help sort of compartmentalize and dictate what that information is. So the three primary ones are the cart mandate, the intent mandate, and the payment mandate. So the cart mandate is the case, like I was describing, where I was on there searching for shower faucets, and we get to which one I want. So the cart mandate would be, okay, I want you to buy this shower faucet from this retailer for this price, and I want you to do it today and do it right now. And so that's sort of a very much, I'm in the loop, I'm saying this is what I want, and it goes off and does it. The intent mandate is more of a, I want to set sort of a, go find me something within these standards. So then I could say, okay, go buy me the shower faucet. I want to spend less than $200. I want it to be silver. I want it to be this brand or one of these brands, and buy it from one of these stores, but just go off and do it and don't bug me until it's done. So that's sort of setting up what my intended thing is. And again, you set the constraints for how much and all that kind of thing. You can also put time limits, say, if you don't find anything today, then don't bother. Like if you're shopping on Black Friday, you'd probably say only look for sales today, don't bother looking later on, that kind of thing. And the payment mandate then is once the transaction has been agreed to, it's how you wrap up how it's being paid for. So are you doing a credit card? Are you doing a bank draft? Are you paying with crypto? Whatever the choices are, the payment mandate contains all the details around how you're paying for it, who's responsible for it, and it ties it back to a cart mandate or intent mandate so everyone can trace where it's gone through. So that, at a very high level, very quick level, is AP2. I've started adding some of these flows into the MCP server because these are all just issuance and verification flows, really. Again, this sort of covers a quick sequence diagram of what I was talking about. Let me give you a little demonstration of what that looks like. So now I'm going to switch to my agent wallet, which already has a couple of mandates in here. I put an intent mandate and a payment mandate in here just as examples, but we'll also add a cart mandate. And this time I'm going to send the credential directly. So instead of using OpenID, I'm going to just issue the credential directly over. So let's get that set up. And I know I was talking about shower faucets, but I'm going to switch it to running shoes just for example, because that's what I've got in my copy and paste. So I'm saying I want to buy from Amazon Nike running shoes, size 11 men's, color blue, $145, all that kind of thing. And I want you to issue it to the agent identified by this DID. So again, it's going to go off, interact with the MCP, using the same issue we did before. I could have changed that if I want to use a different issuer. And you can see it's using the issue cart mandate, which is a specific issuance tool that we've exposed within the MCP server. So it's gone out. And if we watch the wallet, it should just magically appear in the next 30 seconds or so. This is only refreshing every 30 seconds, so it depends how we hit on the timing and how quickly it shows up. And there we go. It's there. If I scroll down, there's our cart mandate. Nike running shoes, $145, Amazon.com. So there's all the information we put in is now an AP2 cart mandate. So it can be used through the rest of the AP2 process as we go forward. So we don't have it completely wired up yet, but that's sort of where we're going with AP2, and just wanted to sort of show that, hey, this is sort of the stuff we're playing with, we're experimenting with and learning about, so that we can make it easier for our customers and partners to also get into this agentic world and issue these credentials and be a part of these flows as we go forward. So that was all I had to demo. I know, Agne, if you had any questions for any of that you wanted to hop into right away.
Oh, yes, definitely. This is really cool, by the way. I think it's like Mike mentioned, all of the agentic commerce thing, there's still so many things to figure out, and there's different standards, but to be able to see the credentials already issued and how it can work, I don't know. I personally find it really amazing. So I do have some questions for you, Mike, and there's some questions in the chat as well. So we can go through them one by one. So the first one is actually, and I think that's a big question in general in identity community. Like, so what is an agent's identity? From your perspective, what do you think what it would look like in this case?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think one, people are still wrestling with a little bit what exactly goes into an agent's identity. Some of the common things you're hearing people talk about is, who published it. So if it's published by like a shopping, maybe Amazon is going to publish shopping agents. So who's it tied to? Is it Amazon? Second, which is also very related, who actually wrote the agent? So Amazon might be publishing it, but they may not be the ones who created the agent. They might be partnering with OpenAI or with Anthropic or somebody. And so then those two pieces of information are critical, because that helps build the trust of, do you trust this agent or not? Who wrote the agent and who is putting it out there. So those would be key factors in it. And then every instance of it, so every time it's deployed or a new one is created or generated, and some of these might be very short-lived, it needs to have its own little local identifier saying this is this instance of it, sort of like your serial number on your computer or a VIN on a car or whatever. It's what is this particular agent would be very critical. And that's likely where you'd see DIDs come in, is that you'd have a DID assigned just to that particular instance of it. And so those would be probably the core piece of information that would go into an agentic identity. Obviously, you can give it names, and you can, say where it's being run. If you're interested, is it being run locally? Is it being run in the US, in Europe, whatever? There's all sorts of those sort of information, but there's those key ones are, what is this individual agent instance called or identified by, who put it out there, and who wrote it. Okay.
Yeah, I definitely agree with those. Like, one other thing that often comes up, I think, is reputation. I don't know if we would consider it's like agent identity, but that's one other thing. It only applies for those long-lived agents, and I think at this point none of us know like how long-lived, especially these shopping agents, will be like for the e-commerce use cases. But that's one thing. And I see there's a comment in the chat from Derek about the human identity as well. So like, in a way, if you're the person who created an agent, or I'm the person, I created my own agent, so that agent's identity, in a way, it's kind of my identity because it's acting on my behalf as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that sort of, I guess, ties to who's the publisher of this agent,
Yeah, that's true.
which individuals can run their own agents, and they would become the publishers of their own agents as well.
Okay, one of the things that stood out to me from your demo today, so like you said that this is not just about making the identity usable by the AI agent, but also making it secure. So I want to maybe ask you to clarify and give a bit more details on how does this help? How does this make sure that the agent does not go outside the scope that it's allowed to do? Like if I ask him to buy a pair of shoes, he doesn't go and buy me a lawnmower or something that's completely unrelated.
Sure. Well, there's a few different layers to that. Some of that comes down to just why MCP, period, as opposed to why you just build this functionality directly into the agents. For one, building it directly into the agents would mean copying the same functionality into all the different agents, so I'd have to do it for OpenAI and Anthropic and everybody else, which is just a large lift. But the other pieces are in there. So part of your question, I asked for shoes, but I got a lawnmower. Well, that's sort of where the AP2 stuff is trying to handle some of that. But the MCP server, it provides a certain layer of protection just in the fact that it's not running within the agent directly, because it means I can put sensitive information like the API key or my credit card information, if I control the MCP server in the MCP server, the agent can't get those. It doesn't have any access to that sensitive information. It's not directly, storing it in context. There's no way that someone could reverse prompt engineer, especially on a long-lived or shared agent. They couldn't go get me Agne's credit card information because it doesn't have it to give. So it sort of gives that layer of abstraction and separation of this is all you have, all the information you need. You don't need more than that to do the thing because the MCP server covers all of that kind of thing. And even the way the tools are defined provides another layer, because the tools themselves don't have to give full access. Like I said earlier, our Truvera REST API can do an awful lot of things, but not all of them are relevant to most agent use cases. So we don't need to expose all of them. And that means the agent can't go off doing things it shouldn't be doing. It can only do this subset of pieces of functionality that we've exposed and told it that it can do. And so those are sort of the ways, you can separate keys and security things and also limit what it has access to and the power that it actually has.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's one of the things, like you need to make sure. I'll be the first one trying to get the agents to buy something for me because I'm very excited about the technology, but I do want to make sure that it's all secure. So I'm not gonna start giving out my card information until I'm sure that the technology.
And you're hearing horror stories of that kind of thing happening right now, where people are going and putting in like their corporate credit card into one of these things, and then someone else pulling it out somewhere else because it got stored in a training model now. And so you definitely want to be careful about that kind of thing, and you want to make sure it's using the right approaches before you do it.
Definitely. We had a question from Thomas, which I think it really fits well here. So Thomas asked if a new schema or another protocol comes up, can the agent then read the specs directly and then work with the added protocol? And I want to answer this one, and Mike, you can add or correct me if I'm wrong, but the way that I'm seeing this, so it doesn't matter what new protocol comes along or what schema is decided to be the best use for e-commerce or agents doing some other stuff. In the end, it's a credential schema that can be issued. So as you were showing here, where the Claude was listing the schemas that you have in the account. So if there's 10 new protocols, you would have 10 new schemas in there, and we can use the MCPI to issue new credentials based on that. So it doesn't tie us into one standard or one protocol.
Yeah, exactly. So what I showed you in the first part with it, when we did the proof of employment, that method of using the create or issue credential tool can support any schema under the sun. So if there's a schema that the agent has access to through the MCP server, then it can issue that credential. So as new protocols come up or even new schema versions come out, so say you want to add a new field or change a field, you can put a new version. It can pull that into the context and then issue that credential. Obviously, what I was showing at the end with the issuing a cart mandate or a payment mandate, those tools are very specific. So as new protocols come, you probably want to, just for simplicity and consistency, expose specific tools for the particular protocols and what they're doing. But that's sort of the edge case when you have very specific flows you want to support and that kind of thing. You might want to do that. But otherwise, the general credential issuance would handle any schema or any changes.
And talking about the MCP, this is one of my questions from before as well. So how hard is it to implement? So if someone was building an AI agent solution and they wanted to add this identity layer to their agents, how hard it would be for them to use the MCP server?
We're trying to make it really easy. So the one thing right now is we're assuming that it'll be run locally next to the agent as opposed to being out on the cloud or the internet or whatever. But to get it up and running, we're going to be open sourcing the GitHub repos to be able to build it directly from code if you want. And we'll also be publishing Docker containers to Docker Hub so you can pull it down from Docker Hub or run it either way. And then you just have to configure a couple environment variables to get it up and running. Trying to be lightweight, trying to be pretty easy. We're still finalizing the documentation, but again, we're trying to make it really simple to use and simple to follow to get it up and running. So if you're comfortable with running its node, so we're running a JavaScript node, if you're running that, should be pretty easy for you. If you're used to running Docker containers, again, should be pretty easy for you to get it up and running.
Yeah, as I mentioned in the beginning, I was able to, but I was just playing around to set it up so I can use it in my Claude desktop to test it out. So with the Agentic, there's a little bit extra, but the whole point is to make it to not make it too complicated. We're living in the world where AI has to do most of the thinking and the work, and we're just the one as orchestrating it all, isn't it? Okay, so there's a question from Jazz, which I think is also very interesting. So how does the flow look when you want to onboard an agent to get the identity in the first place?
So this was going to be a little bit dependent on whoever's building the agents and deploying the agents. With our wall MCP server that we're going to be building, as soon as they connect to it the first time, it will generate a DID for them. So that's where the DID will come from, is from the MCP, the wallet MCP server. But the information about who built it and who's publishing it, that's going to have to come through the publishing system. So whoever's doing that, which again, there's not a firm agreed upon protocol for what that looks like yet. There's a lot of conversations around how do you define that and how do you manage that and make it consistent. And that's, again, some of the agent to agent work is trying to at least encapsulate the output from that, but the input to that is still, I think, a little bit up in the air for where that comes from and how you validate it.
Yeah, I would definitely have to agree. I think it depends on the use case and on the builders and on the agreement what is the agent identity. But once those questions are answered, and a lot of these are more like business questions as well, they're not like technology questions necessarily, I think. So one more question we have from Alex, and Alex is asking, who is the issuer and who is the holder of a VC that represents the agent acting on behalf of a human? Is the person issuing a VC to, let's say, their instance of Anthropic agent?
This is a very good question. So in that human to agent flow, yes, the human would have their version, like they'd have their own DID and they become an issuer. So they would issue to the agent the credential with, say the CART mandate or the intent mandate. So in that case, the issuer is the human, the agent is the holder. So you would be sending a credential from the human over to the holder with what the human wants to be done. And again, it would be signed by the human's DID, so cryptographically provable that the human who controlled that DID sent that credential over to the agent, and then the agent would again present to the store, would be a verifier downstream relying party or whoever is next to sort of say, this is what I'm being asked to do and this is the proof I have to show you that this human on the other side gave it to me.
Okay. Alex, let us know in the chat if that answers your question. I see another question. It's a bit long from Martin. It's about the European Digital Identity Wallet. So Martin is asking, can you take a look at the concepts recently developed in the European Digital Identity Wallet concept and European Business Wallet for legal persons concept? In EUDI wallet, we have an SCA credential defined, strong customer authentication, for the payment purposes. I'm wondering whether we could derive this credential managed by the natural person wallet to the agent AI wallet. In European business wallet, we foresee to generate credentials issued by the legal persons for external entities. AI agents may also consume them in the AI wallet representing legal entities. So I think, to summarize, and Martin, I see you're active in the chat, your question is more, could this concept, could this technology be applied with the EUDI wallet, right? Or the business wallet, depending where the authority is coming from. And Martin says yes. So I don't know, Mike, if you have a comment about this.
Yeah, so I think whether it's EUDI driven or could be an MDL for some of the person identity pieces as well. I think with all of these things, the idea would be you would create either a derivative credential that links back to that source credential, which the holder would hold on to. But the thing that comes on beyond that is the idea of credential delegation, which is something we're looking a lot at as well. And that would be allow me to sort of say, especially in like the employee wallet, business wallet use case, I've been authorized by my employer to do this thing, and I'm passing that authorization down to the agent to do it on my behalf as well. So you get into delegation, and during delegation, you can do things like you can limit the scope of the delegation or constrain it so it can't be redelegated, or start looking at sort of rules around, maybe I personally am allowed to purchase $5,000 without oversight from a supervisor, but I'm going to say the agent can only spend $1,000 kind of thing, like maybe restrict the constraint down, that kind of thing. So I think, again, all of this is still in flux. It's all coming. It's all new, but that's where I think where I see it all going, that would be sort of a delegation play, and you would link it back to that original source credential for the natural person or for the legal person or the business that way. I don't know if Agne, you've looked at some of this stuff too. You might have some other thoughts on that, but
no, I think what you're saying is exactly right. It's very hard to say now for sure, specifically because it's all still kind of changing a little bit. But the idea is that yes, any kind of AI agent will have to be linked to the human identity, whether the human, if they're the ones who are creating the agent, so then for agentic identity, or if they're just using an agent that was created by someone else, but they're still acting on behalf of me as a person. So I need to be identified in a way. So like if there's some kind of liability questions later or some kind of dispute, like we need to be able to make sure that the agent had authority to act on my behalf, and also like knows and can prove who I was at that point, right? So I think that's definitely something interesting. I like the question about the business identity and the personal wallet as well. Like that's something Mike showed it today as two separate things, as a employment credential and then agentic credential. But as you said, Mike, we can see that it could actually be in one use case. So an employer is giving me a credential to do something, and then I will delegate that to my AI agent. Like I think most of us now use AI for a lot of stuff in our work, but for now mostly things that are not necessarily that sensitive, but we could definitely see this going to purchasing or other kind of more risky activities that AI agents are probably very good at doing. But like when it comes to this kind of things, we need to be able to have traceability and accountability in the end to make sure that everything was in place, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think that auditability is a huge piece of all of it. And the other part that really comes in with the EUDI and the European context especially is the privacy implications of that audit tracking. Is yes, a human delegated this, started this. When you're then auditing back, who's finding out through the train that human did that thing without giving away their right to privacy and that kind of thing. So it's a fun balance that we're going to have to walk as we keep developing this and going down this path.
That's true. It's a very good point about the privacy. It's one of the biggest challenges we get now. We want to make sure the auditability is there, because there's no privacy for an AI agent in a way, right? But when the AI agent is representing me, well, I want my privacy to be there. So to make sure that both of these are satisfied, it's not very straightforward.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see any new questions in the chat, but if I missed any of them, so can you please pop them in again? I do have a few from my own to ask Mike, since we still have time, and I do think that this is it's really cool to see it working as well. So it's nice, and there's a lot of conversations, I think, about agentic identity, and lots of people thinking that they have the right solution, but this is something that's already built and can be used. So it's nice to go into a bit more like a nitty-gritty details. So Mike, what's happening behind the scenes when an agent invokes one of these identity capabilities? Can you go in a bit like more detail how it works, like what's the exchange and stuff?
So the basic flow is the agent, in this case Claude, is obviously interprets whatever my request is, and then it looks for, does it have any MCP tools to support that? And so it goes over the tools. Now obviously I've loaded the Truvera MCP in there. So it goes through the Truvera tools, and if I say I want to issue a credential, it goes looking for an issue credential tool name. It reads the description. So if you look at the code for the MCP server, the tool descriptions are incredibly long because, again, we're trying to make a natural language processing thing do something as close to deterministically as we can. Obviously, it's not perfect. So it's a very long description of this is how you use this particular tool. These are the parameters. These are the field names, that kind of thing you must include. All that stuff. So it reads that, interprets it, and then it bundles my request in to fit whatever that tool description is, which it sends over to the MCP server. And the MCP server then takes it and it'll massage it again to fit our REST APIs. So it's not a one-to-one between the REST API and the tool descriptions, because in some cases we're putting defaults in the tool or in the MCP server because we know what they're going to be, because it's again a limited use case or limited scope. And then it'll fill in the details, structure it properly for the REST API, and send over the REST API along with the API key back to the backend server, which will then do the work of issuing the credential, updating revocation lists on blockchain, all that kind of thing will happen, and then send the response back saying that has been done or not. It's a very quick, but it's sort of multiple hops along the way, and each hop sort of understands the data in its own way to get it back to where we need it to be. Nice,
thank you, Mike. And I see, as I asked my question, I saw that Alex asked something very similar. I think the diagram that you had for the AP2 kind of also shows it a little bit as well, to understand how the connection works, because what Alex was asking is that okay, I'll read the whole thing. I can't summarize it very quickly now. So regarding my previous question, I understood from Mike that the human issues an ID VC to their agent. This would mean Anthropic, Google, whoever would need to handle all those VCs for everyone. Or the ID VC would be stored in the person's wallet, and the agent would simply use some kind of secret to be able to use it using the wallet's MCP server.
Yeah, I'm reading it now too.
Yeah.
So Alex, that was a good follow-on. So I think generally we don't want Google or Anthropic or whoever to have access to everybody's credentials or all the agent credentials either. But the idea would be more of a multi-tenant kind of thing. So in what I've got set up right now, it's a one-to-one. There's one MCP server for one agent, so they're bound. So there can only be one thing. So in that case, you don't need to worry about other agents having access to the same credentials or anything like that, or being able to distinguish between them. It just be very tightly coupled between the two, which is, I think, a lot of how MCP servers are being deployed is being deployed just directly. But if you did want to do more of a multi-tenant cloud scenario, like some of these big guys might want to do and probably would do, then they would need to figure out how my session with their agent is tied to a particular wallet. So that when I created my ChatGPT session or my Claude session, I'm spitballing a bit, but I think what would end up happening is my session would create a new wallet in the MCP server, which would have a unique key, would be segregated from anybody else's. And so I would only be able to use credentials from that particular wallet. And again, if it's done right, when your session ends, if you don't need that wallet to be persisted, it would all just get cleared out and be gone, and no one else would ever have access back to that wallet. So that's sort of where I think it would go in that multi-tenant sort of scenario. Again, we haven't built for that yet. That is something that is in our long-term roadmap to look at, is how would we support multi-tenancy with a single MCP server? Because it's a very valid question of how do you do that, and how do you ensure that you're not sending credentials everywhere that anybody can see, or try and hijack and replay and that kind of thing. So it's an excellent question. Like I said, from the moment, we're just saying we expect a one-to-one in most cases with these, because we don't really expect Claude and ChatGPT to be used with our stuff a whole lot. It's going to be more the smaller agents that are built, for bespoke problems that are not just the general use case agents. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah, Alex, let us know if you have another follow-up. And until then, Pierce also has a question, Mike, for you. So can you explain why did cheqd did method cheqd was chosen?
Yeah. So if you have followed the history of us at all, we actually had our own blockchain originally. We had the DOC blockchain, and then we sort of realized it wasn't our core competency. We were more interested in the cryptography around credentials and DIDs and that kind of thing, but not storing them on a blockchain. So then we sort of looked around at what our options were for moving off of our own blockchain. And cheqd is in the identity space. The cheqd blockchain is identity specific. So they've got functionality that is directly for managing DIDs and managing revocation status lists and everything we need. It was just it's right there. It was easy to use. So it just kind of fit, because they want to be, I'm just shilling a bit for them at the moment, but they want to be sort of the backbone, the blockchain backbone of identity. So they're looking to that. They're good at it. So we kind of went with them because they're in our space. They're building tools that fit our needs very carefully, very closely. And it was an easy sort of transition from our own over to theirs. So that's why we're using DIDComm right now, because we wanted a good blockchain solution for decentralization. We have talked, we do have it on our roadmap to look at some non-blockchain solutions. I know a lot of people have asked about DIDWeb and DIDWebVH and a couple of those other options that are out there. So those are likely things you'll see come from us in the coming quarters, years, whatever it ends up being before we get to those. But we also do support DIDKey as well. I don't know if you noticed that one, but we also have DIDKey, which we tend to use more on the holder side, and the DIDCheqd is more often just for the issuer side. Yeah,
exactly. Thank you, Mike. So yes, Pierce, to answer, in summary, it's not limited to DIDCheqd, but as Mike said, it has all what identity DID could require. So it's a very good fit, and that's why we have it here. Mike, can you give an example of an agent needing to verify identity or act on someone's behalf?
I think the e-commerce example we kind of walked through is sort of exactly that. It's proving when the agent is looking to make the purchase, they have to prove who they are as an agent, and they have to prove they have the authority. So they're kind of doing both. They're proving I am the shopping agent and I'm doing it on behalf of Mike or Agne or whatever within these constraints. So right there, you've got a very real example of where agents are going to get used to just go buy something, go buy those running shoes or buy those plane tickets. That's sort of the one you see all the time is I want to go on a trip. Can you go off and buy me basically everything? Get the airplane, get the hotel, get the car rental, get that all figured out. And through that entire process, every time there's a handoff to another system or another agent, they'll have to be approving who the agent is and why they're doing it and who they're doing it for and what the constraints are around it.
Yeah, definitely. I think e-commerce is one of those that we definitely expect to be very popular and take off quite soon. I think one of the other use cases that we have discussed quite a lot internally is more on document submission, like research, like insurance stuff and credit reports, something that I've recently myself gone through, like a house buying process. So the amount of documentation that you need to apply, and there's quite a few AI agents and companies that coming up now to help people to go through like comparing loans and all this kind, because there's a lot of identity information you need to submit. So like you wouldn't want to give this up to any kind of free agent. You want to make sure that there's some kind of rules of how they're handling this information, right?
Well, and definitely in those sorts of situations, it drives home even more where you'd want to get into things like selective disclosure and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And zero knowledge proofs, because you probably don't want any random agent knowing exactly how much money you make every year or what your credit score is and that kind of thing. But you do want the help of the automation to get there. So how can you do that in a safe, non-revealing way is critical.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I see we have some more questions about the DID method. So Derek is asking that whether this model requires cheqd for the issuer, or can we use DIDkey for end-to-end without the need for the blockchain?
You can use DIDkey as an issuer. There are a few restrictions to it. So for our full suite, if you're getting into the selective disclosure and zero knowledge proofs and things, you need to use a DIDcheqd because DIDcheqd supports multiple signing key varieties, whereas DIDkey you just have a single one. So it's not as full featured for our entire platform, but if you just want to do vanilla basic W3C credentials, DIDkeys work just fine all the way through on the entire flow.
Nice, thank you. Gonzalo is asking if we are aware of DID-EBSI method and what would be the advantages.
Top of my head, I'm not remembering all the details of DID-EBSI, but the things we were looking for with DIDcheqd, which might help a little bit, is like I mentioned, we need to be able to support multiple signing methods, which DIDcheqd gives us. I forget if DID-EBSI does or not. We also wanted to have key rotation, which again, I'm not remembering if DID-EBSI has that, but DIDcheqd definitely does. And to be able to link to things like DID-linked resources is a thing that cheqd provides, which, I know what it is. I don't know the details off the top of my head, Gonzalo. DIDcheqd or cheqd to the blockchain provides DID-linked resources natively, which allows us to link things like revocation status lists to an issuer DID for revocation and that kind of management. So it gave us all those things we need. Could we use DID-EBSI? Probably. And again, as I was sort of mentioning with the DID-Webs example, we're not opposed to implementing other DID methods at all. It just has to be the use case for it and the business case. And definitely as the European EUDI stuff comes out and it settles on whatever DID methods it wants to support natively and revocation systems and things, we will follow those. We are committed to being in following where the standards go, where regulatory requirements go, that kind of thing will be there. So yeah, like I said, top of my head, I can't give you a EBSI versus cheqd comparison because I just don't remember all the details around EBSI, but we're not opposed to it. If it makes sense for us to do it, we will definitely look at doing that kind of thing as we go forward.
Definitely. Great answer, Mike. I think we're kind of towards the end of the hour anyway. So I think for the last bit, Mike, I don't know if you have any more comments from your side. From my side, I just want to invite everyone. We'll share the recording and we'll share the link to our GitHub repo, which is public, I think, for everyone to use because
it's not public yet. I've got a couple of changes I need to push up before we make it public, and I'm off most of the rest of the week, so it might be next week before we get it out there, but we'll get it out there as soon as we can.
So it will be public very soon, and since it's something that we want to build together with the practitioners, people that want to use this, so feedback is always welcome. We kind of want to understand what's needed the most. As you saw from Mike's demo, there's already a lot of tools available, so there's a lot that can be done with it, but we're planning to build more and will be an MCP server for the wallet as well. So exciting times to come. So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you so much, Mike, for showing this. Recording will be available, and if anyone has questions later on as well, so we're reachable via all kind of digital channels.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for hosting, Agne. And thank you all for coming. And yeah, send your questions in. And if you've got use cases you're thinking about, share them with us so we can make sure we're thinking about them too.